I am an advocate for an alternative economic model known as the resource-based global economy, or RBE. This is an idea I heard about from a guy named Jacques Fresco, who co-founded an organization known as the Venus Project. The idea with this RBE is that we would construct new, automated, self-sustaining cities all over the world where machines would do all the jobs that nobody wants to do. Or in other words, the really shitty jobs that people are only willing to do if you pay them. And so, through automated processes, everyone living in these cities that we would build all over the world would be given access to the things that they need without a price tag because you don't have to pay machines. This, of course, has the potential to render the monetary system completely obsolete, right? Make it so there's no point in even having money. No reason to buy, no reason to sell, there just wouldn't be any point. So it could do away with problems like poverty, starvation, wage slavery, right? Really, it could solve a whole bunch of the world's problems. Here's the thing, though. Just getting that first test city up and running properly with all the kinks worked out is probably going to take years. Imagine trying to implement that on a global scale. It's going to be a long time before we can have an RBE. We're not going to have a resource-based global economy any time soon. I mean, we should definitely be trying to make it happen as soon as we can, but the point is, we need some way of smoothing the transition from here to there. Or in other words, we need some way to make things better right now. And that's why I'm also an advocate for a universal basic income. This is, of course, what's being advocated by 2020 presidential candidate Andrew Yang. So I am a Yang supporter. I do want Andrew Yang to be the next president of the United States. I want that $1,000 per month that he's offering everyone. That is $12,000 a year that I don't have to work at some shitty job for. It's just given to me. That really has the potential to noticeably improve my quality of life. Contrast that with the other presidential candidates. Take, for example, Bernie Sanders. I like Bernie. He's my next choice after Yang, but he just doesn't have anything like universal basic income. My favorite Bernie policy is his plan to implement affordable housing for all. When I first heard about that, I had to, stop and think, would I rather have the affordable housing for all, or would I rather have the $1,000 per month, right? And what helped me make the decision was the realization that Bernie's plan to implement affordable housing for all would only be gradually implemented over the course of 10 years. 10 years. That's longer than 2 presidential terms in office. So it's a situation kind of like what we're up against with the RBE. Or in other words, I would not be receiving the benefits of this affordable housing for all policy anytime soon. On the other hand, according to Yang, if he's the next president of the United States, we could have UBI as early as 2021. Plus, Yang kind of has his own affordable housing plan anyway. He wants to kind of relax our NIMBY zoning laws, which would free up more land to construct more affordable housing. But the main Bernie policy that Bernie would actually claim is better than Yang's UBI is the federal jobs guarantee. Because according to Bernie, we need more doctors and dentists and teachers and engineers, etc., right? The kind of jobs that Bernie's offering are typically the kind of jobs that require years of special education and training. So we're again looking at a situation where it's going to take a while to fully implement the policy, whereas Yang's UBI would be available as early as 2021. And how many of you are actually interested in being a doctor or a dentist or any of those other jobs that Bernie's offering? I know that I'm not, and I know there's a whole shitload of other people who feel the same way. And if there's really such a shortage of doctors and dentists and so on, then you should take comfort knowing that there are already companies working on automating all of that. In fact, there's already such a thing as robot doctors and robot dentists. It's just not technology that's ubiquitously available yet. You can look it up if you don't believe me. If I start seeing comments down below saying, oh, what are you talking about? This technology doesn't exist, I'll know that you just didn't do your research. But despite all that, there's still a bunch of people who prefer Bernie Sanders over Andrew Yang. Today, we're going to be hearing from one of these Bernie supporters, an individual who runs a YouTube channel called Progressive Politics. And I gotta tell you, with a channel name like that, I want to put to test just how progressive this guy is. So I decided to check and see if he had any videos on the resource-based economy, and he did not. Nothing about Jock Fresco or the Venus Project. Or in other words, the YouTube channel that's supposedly dedicated to progressive politics doesn't even have any videos about the most progressive economic model in the books. That all by itself is frustrating to me, so it just makes me even more frustrated that he prefers Bernie over Andrew Yang. But let's hear him out. Let's hear why it is he thinks that Bernie Sanders is a better choice for president than Andrew Yang. We're going to go ahead and watch his video titled, Jimmy Dore Calls Out Andrew Yang to His Face About Minimum Wage.
Jimmy Dore recently interviewed Andrew Yang, and the interview itself was just absolutely amazing. I highly encourage you guys to take a look at that interview. But in particular, Jimmy Dore did an awesome job of asking the right questions, one of which had to do with the minimum wage. And Andrew Yang's response regarding the minimum wage was very controversial. It was a right-wing talking point, and Jimmy Dore actually calls out Andrew Yang for this. And I really appreciate Jimmy Dore for doing this. I think Andrew Yang's response is a deal breaker for me. I was kind of in favor of the guy, but once I saw his response to this question, I am 100% advocating for Bernie Sanders. Like, I was advocating for Bernie Sanders before this interview, but I liked Andrew Yang's policy platform a little bit more. At this point, I'm actually heavily in favor of Bernie Sanders over Andrew Yang. Take a look at this interview, and then we'll talk about it.
And for a minimum wage, what are you for, the 15 or the 20 or the 25? Are you for one of those?
Well, I'm for 100% for the spirit that no American should be working full time and not be able to pay their bills. But the reality is, if we move to a $15 minimum wage, there are many, many small businesses and industries like fast food that would probably end up getting rid of shifts and workers. Because if you have a fast food restaurant that's paying people $9.25 an hour, and then you say it's 15, then they're going to look around and be like, huh, it's like robot burger flipper time, or it's like self-serve kiosk time, which might be okay. But I'm suggesting that if we put $1,000 a month into people's hands, then that serves as a virtual raise for every worker. It makes workers much harder to exploit. It actually rewards mothers and caregivers who right now a minimum wage would not impact. Like, a freedom dividend is much, much broader and bigger, and then we can turn to a minimum wage, but the need for it goes much, much lower, because I'm essentially giving everyone $1,000 a month raise, which would raise the effective minimum wage to close to $15 an hour anyway.
So, okay, well, I don't agree with that, because, that idea that if we raise people's wages, they'll automate them. They will automate them if they can. They're not doing that because they're nice, right? Or because they would, if they could automate their jobs right now, they would do it right now. And that the only reason
that is generally true.
Yeah,
but it is possible that if you change the economic incentives to automate something, it might become more appealing.
Right. Okay. But I like to bowl. We don't have pin setters anymore. It's not because they tried to get more money for pin setters. Okay.
Well, it is also true too, though, Jimmy, that like if you look at like some struggling mom and pop retailer around the country, like a lot of them are paying their workers like $9-10 an hour, and then if you say, hey, it's $15, like some of them might cut back shifts, or some of them might struggle. Like, I've run a small private company, and a lot of these small businesses are really, really close to, like the red at any moment in time. Mm-hmm. And something that seems like completely common sense to us, being like, hey, just pay people $15 an hour, mm-hmm. actually would cause some of these businesses to say, you know what, I'm gonna have to cut a shift or cut a worker at the margins. So again, I just rather just give people the raise directly, and I think workers would prefer that too. Yeah. If we just put $1,000 a month in your hand.
Yeah, I mean, again, The UBI is you're correct on that, and you're incorrect on the other stuff. Businesses hire when there's a demand for their product. End of sentence. And if there's a demand for their product, they got to hire a worker. And nobody's going to go, boy, I have all these orders, but I can't pay that guy $15, so I'm not going to fill them. So that's illogical. That is
Jimmy,
a right-wing talking point. That is not how economics works.
Businesses are not flourishing at that level. If they're just living hand to mouth and they don't have the orders, and they have a hard time even paying the people they have, if you elevate those costs, it might in some situations mean they cut shifts or cut workers. I mean, that is
not economic theory. That is sound. That is right-wing talking points.
Wow, these are really compelling arguments coming from Jimmy Dore. That is not economic theory. That is sound. Those are right-wing talking points. These are empty, substanceless arguments that do not invalidate the accurate points that Yang is making. I mean, let's be real here. If you're a struggling business owner and you're suddenly required to start paying your employees a significantly higher minimum wage than before, that can make the struggle even worse, which can lead to people's hours getting cut. Now, as a guy who lives in the state with the highest minimum wage in the country, I can personally vouch for the fact that not only can this result in fewer hours for employees, but on top of that, it can also result in increased prices and smaller employee discounts.
But, right, I have a small business. We have 6-7 employees at this place right here. And if I can't afford to pay someone a living wage, I should go out of business.
Except that if you go out of business, then any employees that you had will stop receiving a wage altogether.
Why should I be able to make a living wage, but the person who generates that income for me doesn't get to have a living wage?
$15 an hour is, of course, not necessarily a living wage. It kind of depends on how many hours you're actually working. The same goes for if it's $20 an hour or $60 an hour. It's not going to be a living wage unless you're putting in enough hours for it to be a living wage. And of course, if a struggling business is used to paying its employees only $9 an hour, but now it's required to pay them $15 an hour, that actually increases the likelihood that those employees are not going to be working enough hours. And if you genuinely care about helping everyone get enough money that they can live off of, it doesn't really make much sense to be targeting your argument at the guy that's offering to give everyone $1,000 per month that they don't even have to work for. That $1,000 per month would stack real nicely on top of whatever wages people are earning, but in addition to that, it's going to help the unemployed people who wouldn't even benefit from a $15 minimum wage.
I absolutely love Jimmy Dore for that follow-up. Like, understand this. I have a great respect for Jimmy Dore. I think he does an awesome job with Aggressive Progressive and the Jimmy Dore Show. But my goodness, guys, that was absolutely amazing. Like, understand that Jimmy Dore was put in a very awkward position there. Like, he grabbed his paper and he didn't know what to do. He's looking at his friends like, I don't know what to do here because, like, I'm supposed to be, loving on Andrew Yang right now because he's a host and whatever, and he's a pretty decent progressive, and now all of a sudden he's spewing a right-wing talking point. I didn't see this coming at all. That was my impression, but like, nonetheless, he was put in a very awkward position because Andrew Yang is right there. His face is right there. This is a presidential candidate, and this guy is giving a right-wing talking point. Are you going to follow up and say, I don't agree with you, I think this is wrong, I think this is unethical, I think you're giving a right-wing talking point? And he did. And he did. And I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. I've never seen anyone follow up with that amazing journalism right there. That was excellent job by Jimmy Dore.
Yeah, no. Labeling Yang's argument as a right-wing talking point instead of debunking his points with factually accurate substance is hardly what I would consider amazing journalism or excellent work.
Now, let's talk about the content of what Andrew Yang said.
Yeah, now you're getting it. Good for you. Good for you.
So, Jimmy Dore made a very excellent point with the bowling alleys. Pin setters. Pin setters are like when you set the pins, it's not like there's some guy who's putting the pins there anymore. There's a machine that does that for you.
Which does absolutely nothing to help any of Jimmy Dore's points, but do continue.
And it's not like, that, because minimum wages went up or something, or just because the minimum wage exists, that pin setters were all fired and we had to put machines there.
Yeah, but intellectually dishonest cherry picking like that doesn't really debunk the point that whether they automate or not, businesses do often cut shifts to save money. And if they have to start paying their employees a higher minimum wage, then they are more likely to cut shifts and maybe even automate. Raising the minimum wage is, of course, not exclusively why businesses cut shifts or automate, but it can certainly be a contributing factor, regardless of whatever the reason was for the automation of pin setting.
You put machines there because they were effectively cheaper than paying a guy a minimum wage to put the pins there. So it saved bowling alleys a tremendous amount of money.
Exactly. I'm glad you understand.
It had nothing to do with the fact that, there was a minimum wage or anything like that.
Dude, you're acting like Yang needs to be corrected on the subject of the automation of pin setting. Like, as if he's saying, oh, the whole reason that we have automated pin setters is because the minimum wage went up, right? But he never said that. This was the fallaciously cherry-picked example that Jimmy Dore came up with. Yang never weighed in and was like, oh, yeah, that's because the minimum wage went up. You guys are basically strawmanning Yang.
It had absolutely nothing to do with that. And then, if you get rid of the minimum wage, then what Andrew Yang is saying, well, I'm going to pay, $1,000 a month, so everything's good, right?
Okay, you're definitely strawmanning Yang here. He never advocated for just doing away with the minimum wage. He's talking about potential problems with raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Yeah, not quite. There's a huge problem I think that Jimmy Dore didn't exploit, and this is my reasoning why I don't like the absence of minimum wage, even with universal basic income.
Okay, again, Yang is not promoting an absence of minimum wage.
Pretty much everywhere where there is a lack of a minimum wage, you are going to have workers exploited. Pretty much every location that doesn't have a minimum wage, workers are exploited. So I think Jimmy Dore did an excellent job of following up. This was a deal breaker for me when it comes to Andrew Yang. I made a couple of videos ago. I made a video regarding how I like Andrew Yang, but I'm still voting for Bernie Sanders. At this point, I actually don't like Andrew Yang. I like Bernie Sanders more now.
Yet you don't seem to have an actual, accurate, honest, coherent reason as to why you prefer Bernie over Andrew Yang. Just going on and on about, oh, you can't get rid of the minimum wage. That's not what Yang is advocating.
So I'll remind you, I said vote for Bernie Sanders because if there is an establishment Democrat on the ballot, then they're going to garnish a lot of votes because they have money from politics. They're going to buy a bunch of ads. And if you split the vote between Andrew and Bernie, that's problematic. At this point, I'm not voting for Andrew Yang because I don't like his platform. Like, there's a lot of positions that I really appreciate about him, but I do not like the lack of minimum wage.
What the fuck?
I really wish Bernie Sanders would come out with both jobs guarantee and universal basic income, but he hasn't, and I don't think he's progressive enough. But he is certainly the most progressive person that we can put into the presidency.
No, the most progressive person we can put into presidency right now is the guy that's offering to give us all $1,000 per month as early as 2021. This will more swiftly bring about more progress for more people than any of Bernie's policies, or even all of Bernie's policies combined. Because whereas a $15 minimum wage will only benefit people who work minimum wage jobs, a universal basic income of $1,000 per month will benefit both workers and the unemployed. And again, it smooths the transition from where we are right now to wherever the hell we're going to be in the future. And it begins smoothing that transition sooner rather than later. Whereas Bernie's policies generally don't really start kicking in until later.
And I am so glad now that there is just one clear candidate that we can all vote for and agree on. And if anyone still supports Andrew Yang, you're in favor of a right-wing talking point.
Oh, Jesus Christ. This is pathetic. This is fucking pathetic. What a vacuous fucking argument. It's a right-wing talking point. Look, if you don't support Andrew Yang, then you're in favor of allowing the people who are living on the streets begging for spare change to continue to go without an extra $1,000 per month. Now stack that $1,000 per month on top of whatever wage you are bringing in, and it becomes less necessary to raise the minimum wage all that much. Yang and I are not against minimum wages. We're not even necessarily against raising the minimum wage. Hell, if I was president of the United States, I would create a government-funded minimum wage that would stack on top of the employer-funded wage. That way, employees get more money for the work that they do, but the employer doesn't have to pay for most of it. Wouldn't even have to tax people to pay for it. Okay, these are progressive ideas, what Yang and I are coming up with. A right-wing talking point. Didn't anyone tell you? It's not right, it's not left, it's forward. In your face.
You're, for some reason, in favor of a right-wing talking point, and I think that just because you have universal basic income to pretend like you have this like fluffy cloud to protect you from criticism or whatever, it doesn't work that way. Universal basic income is great, but people still want to participate in the free market. People still want things.
Yeah, and the current free market is a monetary system. The way that we get things in a free market is with money, which is what Yang's trying to give people. What, dude, your arguments make no fucking sense.
And it's going to be incredibly difficult to get those things if you have monopolies essentially controlling the market by simply lowering the wages of all their workers.
We're not advocating for lower wages. What the fuck are you talking about?
So, good job, Jimmy Dore. Respect this guy so much.
And that, I think, is the real point of this video. This progressive politics guy is just a total Jimmy Dore fanboy. He just wanted to do a video say, "Woo, Jimmy Dore, I love you." I don't know how else to interpret this shit. This is fucking woo. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with other people. If you're interested in watching my future videos, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I will see you all in the next one. So have a good one, guys, and peace.
Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang 2020. Yang Gang.